here on the Olympic Peninsula, which is a beautiful place to live and paint and work. I've been involved with art my entire life, but I love to talk about art, and more importantly, I love to talk about paint as well. The two I probably use the most are acrylics and watercolors. I also use gouache, and I often use a little bit of gouache in my watercolors, particularly like titanium white for highlights and stuff like that. But I have a pretty full range of colors of the gouache as well. You know, I think why I like paint, many reasons really. I was managing an art supply store about 18 years ago, and it was shortly after I moved out west, and it carried this paint that I had heard of, but on the East Coast I hadn't seen it quite so much at that point. And I would say within 6 months of working into that company, I came down to Oregon and met Art and Diana and got a tour of the factory, and we just got our fingers in some of the paint. And I just thought that it was so wonderful to meet, you know, the actual paint makers. And I like buying things that are made in America when I can, but I thought this was really cool that this is kind of just down the road. So Pacific Northwest as well. I really love that there's nothing fancy or showboating about the color. I think the M. Graham has probably the basic colors that you need, right? Sometimes a lot of other paint companies have like 170 or 200 colors. Well, you don't really need that so much. And I think in my art supply days, I encountered somebody came in asking for a color called dragon's blood, and I was like, what is that? What's wrong with cadmium red? So I like that they just, you know, they have the basics, they make them really, really well. And they're also probably some of the best priced professional paints that I've ever used. So that's a win-win situation. One of the things about the Pacific Northwest is, and everybody says it comes to buy art supplies or takes a class, right? They're like, the Pacific Northwest has so many greens, right? There's cool greens, there's warm greens, there's light value greens. And so that is pretty complex. The other thing I've really noticed, and I absolutely love this, and so in November, it's probably like one of the darkest, rainiest months here, right? And I always see the color Payne's Gray. And Payne's Gray is this color that, you know, when you mix water, when you thin it down, you get this nice, cool gray. And, as I'm driving to work or to the studio or to the school, I'm always seeing in November, I can paint this dark cloud situation with Payne's Gray. So I think those are a couple things that I notice about this area. I will say one other thing about the watercolors in particular is having the honey in the paint as the sugar. Just kind of going back to our conversation about, you know, what was drawing me to the paint. That really is so unique. And I think one of the reasons that I very quickly changed over from some of the other brands that I was using, assortment of brands probably 20 years ago, and then switching over exclusively to them is, and other watercolor artists know this so well. You buy a tube of paint and it hardens and crystallizes in the tube. And then sooner or later you're cutting it open to try to get some paint out of it. Or the paint was just hardening in my palette and I wasn't getting the intensity of the color back. So I'd always be squeezing out a little bit more out of the tube. And that honey allows you to get the full intensity of the color. And so I really love that. And I feel like I don't waste as much paint with M. Graham. It saves my brushes because of that. So yeah, the honey is so unique. When I first was introduced to it, and I'm always introducing it to my students, the first reaction is like, oh, that it makes the paint a little stickier. But it's the thing that keeps absorbing moisture from the atmosphere, and it actually makes it easier for you to paint and have that flow and the bleeding of colors together. Just the regular sugars and corn syrup that other brands use just don't They don't seem to react the same way. So I love that.